Let's talk for a minute about marked cards and how they might be used in a game. There are many ways to mark a playing card. Essentially, what you're looking for is how that mark can be seen, and then what can be gained from knowing what that mark is, what information it gives you, and then what you do in order to take advantage of that information. The simplest way, of course, is to simply take some ink and block out little pieces of a design, maybe in different places, to identify the number of the card, the value, the suit, anything like that. And that's called blockout work, and there are many versions of that. You can go and buy one of those in a magic shop, and some of them you can look at and know exactly what card it is without any practice whatsoever. Real professional marking systems are a little bit more sophisticated than that. They may block out just the edge of a diamond so that the diamond is a slightly different shape and the whole back is covered in diamonds. And so if you know where to look, you will spot that there's a difference there. Now that diamond that's been changed could be moved around the back of the card so that whatever diamond has been changed and whatever side has been adjusted, that tells you something about the card that you're looking at. There are cards that can be edge marked. That means that just on the very edge of the card itself, it has a tiny mark that if you know what to look for and you look at a deck, you can see by the edge where the cards are that you want. You might see, for example, that all the high cards are near the bottom of the deck. And then you can cut them and deal high cards to other players in a game of low ball, which of course gives them a disadvantage. There are systems that only when you squeeze the deck and you sort of bevel them, you can reveal the marks because they're so close to the edge. And there are also systems like juice. Juice is a way to mark the back of a card that is almost completely imperceptible. You have to learn how to look at the card in a certain way, and you have to know what you're looking for in order to identify what it is. That can actually be spotted from right across the table. Marking systems that use technology are available with inks that can only be read by an infrared camera. There are earlier versions of that where people would wear contact lenses, red contact lenses, and so certain colors in the back of the card would only register if you were looking through a red lens. And these are the type of marking systems that I think are kind of amateurish today. There are other systems now. I know that I personally have used things like Daub, which is a temporary ink that goes down on the back of a card. I think the simplest, but also one of the most interesting, is something called the one-way principle. The one-way principle is something that magicians use all the time, but it's essentially a way you can look at the back of a playing card and you can tell if it's been turned one way or the other, because most cards are not perfectly symmetrical. So if you look at the way that the pattern intersects the edge of the card at one end and the other end, it'll be slightly different. If there's a white border all around and you look at the pattern that has been designed, the chances are that pattern is not uniform on both sides. And if you can tell there's a difference at one end, then you can have an advantage. And years ago, somebody came to me from a casino in the United States, not one of the major casinos. They showed me a deck of cards and they said, "We think these have been marked." And they hadn't. Instead, they had been sorted. And what had happened is the white border around the card was not uniform. In other words, at one end it was slightly thicker white and thinner white at the other end. And someone had turned it so all the high cards were facing one way and all the low and middle cards were facing the other way. And I was able to go through face down and immediately remove all the high cards. This blew this person away because he was unaware of this principle. He was in charge of security for that casino. So that's the kind of thing that can be done with marked cards. You don't have to do anything to the cards to mark them if you're playing with real cards in the real world, legitimate cards out of a fresh deck. But if you do mark cards, there are many ways of doing it, including a system that I'll talk about one day where even from across the table, you can know exactly what card is going to get dealt to who is going to win, and what to do to change that outcome. But if you're playing with a professional, your chance of spotting those marks are next to zero.